Mark Tronson from the Australian Missionary News. I have here today with me Gavin Lawrie. Gavin is a retired barrister and solicitor, and Gavin came from Sydney. He's been in the Tweed Shire for some years, and today we're going to enjoy ourselves talking to Gavin. Now, Gavin, where did you grow up and did your education?
In Sydney.
Where? Where in Sydney?
East Hills. I went to East Hills Boys High School and attended Sydney University.
Wonderful. And so you did law there?
Studied law, but before that I studied I got an economics degree, and then a 2-year break and hitchhiked overseas and came back and studied law.
So where did you go overseas?
Oh, about 35 countries. I started out in South Africa and ended up, went across North Africa, Algeria, Morocco, places like that, round Europe and came home overland to India, and then flew from Calcutta to Bangkok and came down the peninsula and flew home from Singapore.
Well, Gavin, you must have been one of the very earliest of the young Aussies travelling.
I think so. I think it was early days and doing a lot of hitchhiking around. But in parts of the world you can't hitchhike at all, so you travel by local bus or train and third class.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, now, tell us about your years down in Sydney working in the law.
Yes, I practised as a barrister in Wentworth Chambers in Phillip Street in Sydney. And subsequent to 5 years doing that, I worked in a company called a place called the Joint Coal Board, and then in the legal department of the Commonwealth Bank before 18 years ago, coming up to the Tweed.
Okay. Now, did you do any major cases as a barrister? You won't want to put that on. The answer is no. That's fine. Now, this word sea change is something that has come into our vernacular in the last, say, 10 to 15 years, except that you did one well before that.
Yes. About 20 years ago now, because my wife Jan and I had decided we didn't want to live any longer in Sydney. We thought it was getting too big and too grimy 20 years ago. So we started looking around, and we went as far afield as Hobart and Coffs Harbour and all places in between, and finally settled on the Tweed.
Okay. Now, you then opened just your own legal practice. Where?
In Murwillumbah.
That's a small town?
Yes, it's a town of about 9,000 people, about 30 kilometres from the Tweed-Coolangatta border.
Now, it was during those years that you were also elected onto the Shire Council.
Yes, I was.
And so, what years were they?
1999 to 2005.
Wonderful. Now, tell us now something about your retirement.
At the beginning of this year,
2009,
I became a victim of the global financial crisis.
A lawyer!
A lawyer. So what was happening after 14 years practising on my own, clients simply were not walking in the door. But all of the overheads and the high in law just continued on at an unrelenting pace, and so Jen and I had a lot of discussion over a short period of time and decided that it was cheaper to retire.
Cheaper to retire. Well, now
and we're in a position where I can afford to do so.
Yeah,
so
sure,
we did.
Sure. Now, you are not only a person of the law, but you are also a person of the gospel.
Yes.
And that you have some future aspirations as to a book. Now, can you tell us something about this book?
Yes. About a year ago, a friend of mine in Sydney sent me a book without warning, called The God Delusion, written by Richard Dawkins, an Oxford University professor, and I want to write the reply to that book, and I'm going to call it Deluded About God.
Deluded About God. Yep. Well, you and I have talked about this just for some time now.
Yes.
And so what would you say are the key ingredient, just to your argument, in say 2 sentences?
Okay. What this really is about is a mindset. It has nothing to do with science, and people are looking at the same evidence, the evidence of nature, and they come to vastly different conclusions. And the evolutionist, who doesn't want to believe in God anyway, has made that decision, dresses up his argument with science.
Okay, now, how will you, being a barrister in law, help you with this argument?
Well, one has to look at the evidence. What lawyers always have to do is look at the evidence, and the evidence is going to determine the outcome.
Okay.
Now, what my opponent is doing is not looking at the evidence. He did it the wrong way around. He has already come to a conclusion, and then is looking for an explanation for that conclusion.
Gavin Lawrie, barrister at law, retired, a soon-to-be author. This has been a splendid time together. This is Mark Johnson from the Australian Missionary News, signing off.
Thank you, Mark.